has not been the best weekend. You guys are about to see why. I'm sure you all have some questions, right? Where was Rob on Friday? Why is the stream starting late today? Why is he wearing a hat? So we've got a lot of questions to answer. We've also got to talk about the market because the market's been looking great the past couple of days. I'm very sad that I missed the market on Friday. It was a very green day, so we saw some amazing things, but we do have a lot of questions to answer. Starting with, I think we'll start with, where was I on Friday? Why wasn't I here for the stream? And to answer that, I'll tell you what I was doing on Thursday. I was rock climbing, and I happened to fall, and fall pretty far. So if anyone is squeamish or doesn't want to see my arm, which I'm about to show you guys, feel free to look away. But for anyone who's curious, we ended up getting a little injury on my arm, and it's quite potentially broken, right? So it's potentially broken. I've got a doctor's appointment later today, and they'll x-ray it, and they'll let me know. But it was very swollen, very sore on Friday. Just didn't feel quite up to doing much of anything other than laying on the couch. But we are back for the day today, so hopefully this won't impede anything. But we are starting late just because it takes a little bit more time in the morning to get everything done and take care of stuff and to ice it a little bit. Now that I'm on some pain medication, I've got to have some breakfast in the morning, so I'm not taking it on an empty stomach. So, things just take a little bit longer in the morning. That's why we're starting the stream a little bit late. We'll probably be starting them late for another week or two. We'll see how long this thing really takes to heal up. It's feeling much better than it did over the course of the weekend. But all in all, that hopefully answers your questions. I'm wearing the hat because it's tough to hold a hair dryer, right? So a blow dryer, it's tough to hold with this arm. So otherwise my hair would be all wonky, it would be all crazy. So that's why we're wearing the hat. That's what happened for anyone who was curious. And hopefully it'll be a quick recovery. But good morning, everybody. I know now we've got a ton more people for the initial couple minutes of the stream because we are starting late and everyone thought we would be starting at 9 like usual. But good morning, Rocky Mountain Gobblers, Quaid, Susan, Rich M, Kusama, Niner Zulu, Francis, Christian Princess, Mike Markley, Christian Princess, Zane, Quaid, Chiwan, N. Bennett, and Better Life, and Matthew. Good morning, guys. Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We've got a ton of good news for the stock market, right? So the stock market is actually looking pretty darn good. But for anyone who's just jumping into the stream now, just so everyone knows, we will likely be starting the streams at 9:25 for the next couple of weeks, right? Just in case anyone was curious, just so y'all know. But we've got some really good news for the markets today. And in fact, we had some good news probably that we should have covered on Friday, but we weren't here for it. So last week was actually the best week in the stock market since November 2020. So cool record right there. Best week in over a year. And Friday's rally capped the week off for the S&P to have gained 6.2% and the NASDAQ 8.2%. So really great stuff. We are seeing, if you guys look at the S&P, we'll take a peek at the 30-day chart. Pretty good stuff in the S&P. It's moving up quite significantly. The Russells is also moving up pretty significantly. You can see a lot of the indexes. A lot of stocks are moving up pretty good. MULN, BBIG, CEI. We're going to talk about all these stocks today. Even Sundial. I mean, we'll pull up Sundial real quick. Even Sundial had a great week. And we're looking at earnings coming later this week. And we just got some good news for Sundial today. We'll hopefully have time to cover that. If not, we'll make a video, and we'll probably make a video regardless just on Sundial, just to cover some of the stuff that's going on with it. But we've got a ton of good news in the market, right? Stocks are soaring. Oil is going up in price. That's good for CEI stock, wherever we are. Yeah, it's good for CEI stock right over here. You can see CEI is up. We've got a ton of stuff to talk about. So the markets are doing very well. Now, part of the reason why the markets are doing well is because of the Fed meeting that we had last week, right? People saw the 0.25% rate hike and were very excited that it looked like the Fed was going to try to support the markets, right? They used the Russia-Ukraine excuse. They used that excuse to basically lessen some of the tightening that they were going to do. Originally, people were expecting a 0.5% rate hike because of all the inflation, and the Fed decided not to do that. They did a 0.25% rate hike, and they basically just showed the markets that they were very willing to use whatever excuse they could find to support the market. So people were very excited to see it. So good stuff on that front. The Fed has certainly helped to pump the markets up. That's likely why we saw the best week since November 2020 for the market. So good stuff there. Now, in more general news, we'll get back to the markets in a second. We've got to talk about Russia and Ukraine, right? Because stuff is going on. Biden is going to visit Poland on Europe. He's going on a Europe trip this week. He's going to talk to some people in Europe. And he's added a stop in Poland, very close to this whole conflict. to his trip to talk with NATO and European allies. So we'll see what gets done there. Maybe we'll get some additional word on what might be going on sanction-wise, additional sanction-wise. Maybe he's going to convince some European countries to really cut off Russian oil and gas completely. But that seems unlikely, right? But oil and gas are going up today, and we're going to talk about that in a second. First, we'll update you guys real quick on what's going on in Ukraine. So the besieged city of Mariupol rejects Russia's surrender demand as the deadline passes. So the city of Mariupol, Russia offered to spare the lives of those who complied with their surrender ultimatum and would allow civilians to leave if their demands were met. And people decided not to go along with it. They decided to keep on fighting Russia. So it looks like that's the way this is going to go, right? It doesn't look like anyone in Ukraine wants to stop fighting anytime soon and surrender to Russia. They'd much rather fight Russia than become part of Russia. So we're looking at what could potentially be a somewhat drawn-out conflict. Now, there are a couple of ways this could go, right? Because analysts are saying that Russia is looking increasingly desperate as the Ukraine war nears a stalemate, right? So maybe Russia's going to buckle. It doesn't seem likely that Ukraine is going to buckle, but we have reached a point where it's pretty much a stalemate. There's not too much going on in terms of real new territories being taken. Obviously, Russia's military is much bigger, but Russia is getting hammered with these sanctions, and it's tough for them to access a lot of their capital and to implement new means of fighting the Ukrainians, right? So this is coming from Kurt Volker. This is a quote from Kurt Volker, a former U.S. ambassador to NATO. He says, I don't think Russia can win. They're bogged down. They're having trouble with supplies. They're having trouble with ammunition. They're not able to take the major cities. They're not advancing. They're showing a lot of desperate measures like calling in Syrians or asking the Chinese for help or threatening to attack the NATO countries' weapons supplies to Ukraine and raising the specter of biological or chemical or nuclear use. These are all signs of, I think, desperation, and so time is working against them now. So potentially we're going to see a situation where Russia ends up buckling, right? Obviously, Putin wouldn't want to just surrender or give up completely. He would want some kind of a deal to go through that makes it look like Russia's getting something out of this whole conflict, because otherwise all Putin succeeded in doing is destroying the Russian economy. Now, we are getting the opening bell. Let's take a look at what these stocks are doing. So we've got the SPY. It's looking good. It's up on the day. MULN up about 20%. BBIG up about 20% as well. 21% on BBIG. Now, we've got some interesting news for these stocks. CEI also up 5%. So let's skip ahead. We'll first talk about what's going on with CEI because that is somewhat tied to Russia. All right. Oil prices jump again on Russia-Ukraine fears as the International Energy Agency calls for a cut in energy usage. So oil prices jumped even higher on Monday after Russia and Ukraine talks appeared to yield no sign of progress, and markets continued to fret over tight supply, sparking a call by the International Energy Agency to reduce oil demand. So it's looking like oil is back on the run again. Warren Buffett made a good call buying up that big oil giant. Who'd have guessed? You can see oil on the rise, up about 3.8%, explaining why CEI is up about 5%, right? CEI tends to rally on oil going up, so we're seeing CEI move up as well, right? CEI, anyone who's in that is enjoying this, right? Obviously, you're not enjoying it when you go to the gas pump, but if you're holding the stock, then you're looking good. BBIG is also moving up pretty significantly. Let's pull up real quick the story that we've got on them, and then there's some other things that we'll talk about related to MULN and the market overall. But first off, BBIG. For those of you who don't know, BBIG Vinco Ventures, $463 million market cap stock. It's stock that's pumped in the past. We'll pull up the long-term chart just for anyone who's not familiar with it, but it is pumping today on some news. It's actually the same news that had it pumping way back when. Up to 1250 just about was the high that they got to off of that news. Now, part of it's short squeeze hype, but part of it's also the Tide dividend, the Cryptide dividend. A lot of people have been waiting for this. You can see this thing did crash after the initial pump. It's because that dividend was actually delayed. So let's pull up the SEC filing that they just released last Friday, where they actually talk a bit about the dividend. Now, we're not going to go through this whole filing, right? But they do, if you Control F, you can actually see they mention the Cryptide dividend quite a few times, right? There's quite a few mentions of Cryptide in here. And that has gotten people very excited. So we'll pull up just a little summary of what's going on. The Second Amendment to Cryptide's registration statement on Form 10 was submitted on March 18th. And basically, people are getting excited that Cryptide is looking like it's going to start to potentially be coming out soon. Now, Cryptide, for those of you who don't know, it's a dividend that's essentially going to be, well, it's a company that's essentially going to be given away in the form of a dividend. So people holding shares of BBIG, when this dividend actually goes through, will get shares of a new company, Cryptide, with ticker symbol TYDE. And that was the reason for the pump that we saw last time, right? In addition to short squeeze hype, which we'll look at in just a second. We'll look at the short interest on BBIG. But you can see that we are pumping up again now that hype is building, now that Cryptide might be coming out sooner than we thought. And we have seen a couple of pumps in the past when there has been Cryptide hype. You know, they have kept delaying this thing over and over again. So we'll see if this actually comes out this time. But people are hoping to buy up shares of BBIG and essentially get a second company as a spin-off dividend for just holding this company through the record date and whatnot. So there is reason to potentially think this might go higher, right? And especially if you want to get shares of Cryptide, then it might not be the worst buy if you guys are interested in all of that. But the short interest, we'll pull up real quick. We've got that sitting at 16.23% of the free float, 28.35 million shares short on BBIG. So this obviously has been a short squeeze play in the past. There were actually fewer shares short back when it was quite elevated in price. Obviously, since it was elevated in price, that equated to a greater dollar amount that was short. Now we're looking at about 28 million shares short. Multiply that by what the price is now, $3. So maybe $75 million short on this stock. And it's been to highs due to the same factors that might be raising it in price now up to $12.50. So there's a chance that we could see this thing go significantly higher, especially if we get some more volume, more momentum. We'll pull up where they're at right now on StockTwits. They're currently number five top ranking on StockTwits. All in all, on Mondays, you typically don't see too many people talking about things on StockTwits. We've only got 1,900 mentions for them at the moment. That's because the markets have been closed for the past 2 days. We'll see over the next couple of days how this develops, right? If we do end up getting a bunch more people into BBIG, hopefully we will, and hopefully we'll see BBIG moving up higher. But MULN is currently dominating the StockTwits map, right? Number one with 8,000 mentions. So we're going to look at Muln, and we'll pull that up right here. First off, we'll just take a peek at the chart and admire the fact that it has actually made new highs. Once again, $3.83 just this morning, new highs on this pump. And notably, though, not even where it was at. Not even where it was at on January 1st. So January 1st, it opened up at $5.22. It's still down 29%. I mean, that's essentially what we're seeing, not just in Mullen, but in a ton of stocks, right? A ton of stocks. Especially more growth-oriented companies, a ton of them are down massively, even since January, despite the market having the best week since November 2020, right? A lot of stocks are still down in pretty big ways. So there is certainly still upside, right? Nobody has missed the boat. You can even look at the overall S&P and take note of the fact that we're still, despite the fact that we've risen quite a bit, we're still down a ways from where we were in January, where we started the year. We're still down about 6% in the S&P. So will we see ourselves get there this week? We'd have to have a pretty good week to get there, but it's possible, right? We could get there this week. We could get back up to all-time highs. It doesn't seem incredibly likely that we'll just skyrocket. Maybe we will. But over the next couple of weeks, we sure could get there, especially if we don't get any more bad news. If we just get some more good news for the markets, maybe some positive developments in Russia and Ukraine, we could certainly see ourselves moving back up. That would be very nice. Now, another stock, I mean, you know, it's not just the short squeeze plays. Another stock that we did not get the chance to mention on Friday because we were not here, that's been doing rather well. Central Electric Group. I know that's one that a lot of people on the channel are interested in. Sen. It was up pretty big, about 20% if I'm not mistaken, on Friday. So from the open to the close, it was up 19.27%. We had another boost during the after hours and pre-market, and currently we're sitting up around 11%, and at the highs we were up about 20%. So it looks like we've fallen in price just a little bit, but that's another one. I mean, a ton of these growth stocks seem to be doing pretty darn well. Now, this could be a sign, right, that we've hit the bottom. of this big bear market for all of these growth stocks. We'll also pull up Sundial. And Sundial also had a great week yesterday, or last week. And today they're up 2.53%. Now they've fallen a little bit from where they opened. They've fallen down a touch. We'll see if the 53 cent holds them. Hopefully it will. But a lot of these growth stocks have actually been doing a lot better than the overall market, right? A lot of these growth stocks that have been getting hurt over the past year have actually seen some great stuff this week. Now, they've seen some great stuff in the past, right? We've seen weeks like this before. So it's not a guarantee that they're just going to skyrocket and shoot to the moon all of a sudden. There's no guarantee there. Hopefully they will, right? That's the goal. We don't know for sure, though. But I am hopeful now, right? More hopeful than I have been in the past. I think that we've seen a lot of pain in the markets. The Fed has really started to show their true colors to a lot of people, or at least a lot of people have started to accept that the Fed isn't going to be quite as hawkish as how they initially said. And we'll actually get to hear more about that this week. In fact, today, Powell is going to be speaking at 12 o'clock. So we'll see what he has to say. It's going to be interesting, most likely. I will probably have to miss it, unfortunately. I'll be at a doctor's appointment getting this x-ray. But we'll see what Powell says. I'll update you guys when I get back from it. And then 8 o'clock on Wednesday, Powell is talking again. So we'll see what Powell says. Now, this past meeting that he did was actually very good for the stock market. It helped contribute to us having the best week since November of 2020. Hopefully he'll say some more good stuff, right? Hopefully he doesn't turn around and become very bearish. There are, unfortunately, circumstances which might lead him to be a little bit more hawkish, right? We are seeing oil go back up in price. It's up 3.8% today. And while that's good for stocks like CEI, it is likely that that's going to take its toll on inflation. And let me pull up the inflation chart just for anyone who hasn't been paying attention to the market over the past couple of months. Inflation is running rampant at the moment, right? We're seeing inflation go up pretty dramatically. And notably, none of these most recent readings are really including the increase in costs that we've seen due to the crisis in Ukraine and the increased cost of gas and fertilizer and all kinds of stuff that are going to be increasing in cost due to supply chain issues that we're seeing from that. So it is likely that we're probably going to see inflation run pretty rampant. However, the Fed does have the excuse of, it's due to Russia and Ukraine. It's not due to money printing or anything like that. They can say that. And that might lead to them not needing to be as hawkish, right? They might not need to pull in the policy as much because they at least have an excuse explaining why inflation is so great. And they can live with that, right? They can live with somewhat high inflation. In fact, if you want, you can average out the inflation over the past 25 years. And the Fed has had a goal of an average of 2% inflation. So if you look back maybe 10 years or so, oftentimes inflation was below 2%. And as long as inflation comes down quickly, then they can look back and say, all right, well, over the past 10 or 15 years or whatever, inflation was typically below 2%. And if you average it all together with this new inflation, then we're just sitting at an average over the past 15 years of maybe, 3%. And that's not really too far off of what we wanted. In fact, that's good. So the Fed might come in and say something like that. They might try to pull something. And all in all, as long as they're supporting the market, I'm relatively happy, right? As long as they're not crashing the stock market, I'm relatively happy. I've come to terms with the fact that we're probably going to see some pretty significant inflation, and I've done what I'm going to do to hedge against it, right? There are things that people like to buy into, such as gold and silver, which actually recently, as inflation has become a little bit more prevalent, have been spiking. We'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks and months as we get more inflation readings. Maybe gold and silver will perform exceptionally well. There's also crypto. We'll pull cryptos up. We'll see what cryptos are doing. But some people do like to use those as inflation hedges as well. 41,000 is the price of Bitcoin right now. And over the weekend, it's not done all that much. But people do like to talk about cryptos as inflation hedges. So we'll see if those actually end up holding up against inflation over the long term when we're seeing really high inflation. Because unfortunately, as we've been getting these big inflation readings, though initially, cryptos are rising when we were printing all of this money, ever since we really started seeing real inflation, right, in the cost of our goods, Bitcoin's not actually been doing all that good. Cryptos haven't been doing great, right? They've been on a bit of a decline, similar to stocks, as people have gotten worried about what the Fed might be doing to combat that inflation. So we'll see what happens with Bitcoin and cryptos. But that's something that I do have some exposure to, and think could potentially hedge against inflation, right? You never know exactly what's going to happen. So I figure better safe than sorry. Better to have some of them than not to have any of them. So let's see what we've got. Thoughts on HYMC, says David. Yeah, HYMC update, asks Zane. Yeah, so we'll take a peek at HYMC. Now, I've not kept up with this one over the weekend. In fact, I didn't keep up with anything over the weekend. I mostly just laid on the couch and iced my arm. But HYMC, it's down about 4% today. Unfortunately, it's been on a decline ever since, we'll pull up the chart, ever since this day right here, when AMC ended up buying up a big part of this company. Let me pull up what we heard about them on Twitter. So let's pull up the Twitter for Ortex and see what we've got on HYMC. Unfortunately, I believe there was an offering, if I'm not mistaken. There was an offering, which did end up crashing the price of this stock just a little bit. But over the long term, let's take a peek at the market cap. We will take a peek at that. It's not super high, is what's interesting about this. And in an inflationary environment, it can't hurt to have a little bit of gold or gold mining stocks, right? So $77 million market cap, that's certainly pretty darn low. AMC owns, I believe it was 22% of this company that they bought up, and then they also got some warrants as well as part of the deal. So it's looking like it does have the potential to squeeze quite a bit, to squeeze up in price quite a bit, especially if we can get some apes coming over. It's really going to be dependent on that in terms of if we're going to see a big upshoot in price all of a sudden with HYMC. However, I will say that in the past, at least from a fundamental perspective, they were mining quite a bit of gold back during the second and third quarters of 2021. Okay, they were doing pretty good stock price-wise, right? They were on the decline, but they were still doing decently, right? They were around, they were at least above where they are now. In fact, before this earnings call, they were sitting around $1.60. And they did have decent numbers, right? They had decent numbers for how much gold they were pulling out of the ground. And the reason they declined was they announced that they were going to stop a lot of their mining operations. They had some liquidity issues, rising costs had gotten to them, and they were stopping a bunch of their mining operations. They crashed down in price. Now that AMC and us, now that we, as well as AMC, have injected a lot of liquidity and more cash into them, they're probably, at this earnings call that we're going to see on the 23rd, they're probably going to announce that they're going to resume a lot of these mining operations. Now, I wouldn't expect this earnings call to look amazing because they did, just at the previous earnings call, shut down mining operations, so I wouldn't expect them to have great numbers for how much ore they've been able to pull out of the ground this earnings call, but we'll likely, most likely, hear about future growth that they could be going through in the next couple of quarters, and that's probably going to be pretty bullish, would be my guess. We'll have to wait and see the next 2 days for the earnings call, right? We'll see what they end up saying, but I would expect it's probably going to be pretty good, right? I would expect maybe to move up on the earnings call, but no guarantees, right? We've moved down a little bit. We're even down a little bit today, but this is one that I'm content to hold just in case the apes do decide to come over. In addition, it's a gold stock. We're likely to be in a high inflationary environment over the next couple of weeks and months. Well, really, not necessarily the next couple of weeks, but more so the next couple of months. And probably the next couple of years, we'll see higher than normal inflation. Even the Fed is projecting that. So I'm not too worried about holding this gold stock that has gotten fairly cheap over the past couple of years, right? You can see it's down quite a bit. And over the past 2 years, it's down even more. So now that AMC's in it, and it has the potential to get some apes coming in, I'm not too worried about HYMC, right? I'm comfortable holding that one. So then we've got Tesla battery supplier CATL plans to acquire lithium mining company in Canada at Elon Musk. Very cool. CATL, let's see. Can't find CATL. Load up. Oh, maybe LAC? LAC? Lithium Americas. Here we go. Here we go. So yeah, this one looks like it's, anything involved with batteries over the past couple of years. Look at that. Up from 2 years ago, it was at $2. Now it's at $29 per share. Not bad. They've certainly done very well. And like a lot of stocks, it looks like they peaked in November and have gotten pushed down quite a bit. But in this inflationary environment, they're probably going to be charging more for the stuff that they're selling. So we'll see. That could be good. that could be good. And any TMTG news? No news. Would really, I would really love to see DWAC become TMTG. And once again, I did not actually look at much over this weekend. In fact, I looked at absolutely nothing. But there isn't anything that I've seen coming from them too lately, right? We're waiting. First of all, when is that earnings call? Is there going to be an earnings call? No, we're just waiting for first off for them to become TMTG, and second, if they would release some official numbers regarding how many new users on True Social there are. That would be very nice, right? I think that would be very bullish for the stock when we do end up getting that. Right now, it looks like it's taking a little bit of a dive. It's been playing around $70 the past couple of days. It looks like, and DWAC is one that I'm not too worried about doing well, right? I think it, well, it's almost certainly going to do pretty decently. And for my circumstance, as long as it's above $50, I've achieved maximum profit. So I'm not super worried about it falling below that level. How much above or below it goes, it really is going to depend on the numbers that we get, right? That's really what this is going to depend on. How many new users can they get? How much can they get those new users to pay on average? And we'll see what happens, right, when they start having earnings calls. Particularly, after they become TMTG, that's likely going to be a good thing. Typically, when SPACs end up not being SPACs and becoming the real company, they typically do pretty well. BRCC, Black Rifle Coffee Company, started doing incredibly well, much better than they had been doing as soon as they became BRCC instead of SBEA. So they were trading pretty much just around 10 or $11 the whole time, and as soon as they became BRCC, switched that ticker symbol over, they moved up a decent amount. They hit highs of $22.80, so they more than doubled at the peak. And they're sitting around $16 right now. So we could be looking at good stuff when DWAC becomes TMTG. We're just going to have to wait for it. They've been very slow, very slow to do it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. What is the saying? The turtle wins the race, or the the tortoise versus the hare, slow and steady wins the race. That's it. So I'm not too worried about them rushing into stuff, right? We want for there to be a chance for them to build up a pretty consistent base of holders, which we've got at this point. So I'm not too worried about DWAC, even though we're seeing a little bit of red today. But I feel like I was saying something maybe about Sundial, which we do have pulled up. So Sundial, actually, we got good news for Sundial, right? Nova Cannabis reported its audited consolidated financial statements, okay? And what is it? Year over year revenues. 175% increase, okay, of sales. Yeah, so revenues in the fourth quarter of 2020, from the fourth quarter of 2020, and a 23% increase from the third quarter of 2021. So big increase in revenues for Nova Cannabis, which is actually the cannabis company that Alcana owns a 63% stake of. So that is going to be factoring in to Sundial's growth in the future. So good news for Nova Cannabis is good news for Sundial, since Sundial will be acquiring about 62 or 63% of that company, the majority ownership interest, once that Alcana acquisition fully goes through. So good stuff, right? Sundial was up on that news in the pre-market, and they're still up. They're up about 2%, and they're hitting up 53 cents, which is a key level for them. We're going to see if they can stay above it. Hopefully they can. The market's starting to take a little bit of a turn. Hopefully we'll see the market move up and instead of continue moving down here, but we'll see what happens with that. Now, there was something interesting, something you guys have probably heard of. Something you guys have probably heard of regarding Boeing. And we've got it right here. Unfortunately, there was a plane crash, and we'll pull up BA. Unfortunately, this was not good for, the people in the plane or Boeing, the company, because it was a Boeing plane that did crash. So a China Eastern Airlines plane carrying 132 people has crashed in China's Guangxi region, the country's state media reported. Civil Aviation Administration of China said there were 123 passengers and 9 crew members on board. The number of casualties and reason for the crash are not yet known, and rescue crews have been deployed to the area. So this was a Boeing 737 plane operated by China Eastern Airlines. And we don't know why the plane crashed yet, but whenever a company's plane crashes, it's typically not very good for the stock of that company. And you can see Boeing is down pretty significantly, down about 5.6%. So it's not looking great for Boeing on this news, unfortunately. Boeing is down off of that. And even more unfortunately, we don't know what happened to all of these people, the 132 people who are on the plane. So, this kind of stuff doesn't happen often, very fortunately, but when it does, it's certainly not good. So hopefully they will find that those people are all right. Hopefully it was not too bad of a crash. But the fact that they haven't announced anything yet isn't ideal. I mean, you would think that if the crash wasn't that bad, someone might have been able to, who was on the plane, use a cell phone and call somebody. So my guess is it's not going to be the best situation, especially, it happened 5 hours ago. My guess is probably not too good. So, be glad that you were not on that plane. Let's see. So Brian Steezy's channel, can you discuss any tax information tips you might pass along? I wonder if TurboTax will auto-import Webull accounts. So in the past, I believe, and not financial or tax-related advice, that's for sure, but I believe TurboTax will import most information from brokered accounts, right? So for most brokerage accounts, I'm pretty sure TurboTax will have not too much of a problem just importing the trades automatically and whatnot. So in the past when I've done it, it's been fairly easy, fairly simple. So not too bad. Not too bad. And Greg says all died. It's on Telegram video. Wow. And Matthew 707, anyone still holding MULN? We'll pull MULN back up and we'll see what it's at right now. Let's see. So look at that. Up 24% today. It's looking like it's rebounding. It was for a little bit, looking like it wasn't doing too good. But there we go. We're nearing new highs potentially. Now, I'm not in MULN. I have not been in MULN. I'm in too many EV companies at this point. Didn't want to get in on another one. But, it is a growth stock. And there's probably long-term potential there for anyone interested in it. It has been hurt pretty dramatically. Like we were looking at a lot of companies back in November. It was at $15. So there's certainly long-term potential in it, right? It's really going to matter what ends up happening with their future projections, right? They aren't selling vehicles yet, but we're going to see what happens with the new battery they've been working on, the solid-state battery. That got them pretty hyped up initially. It could be good for them. So we'll see what goes on with MULN over the long term. I am in other EV plays, notably Sndl, which is up 7% on the day. It's taken a little bit of a hit. It's been doing pretty good the past week as well. So we're hitting up that $2 mark. This is actually the highest we've been since January. This is the highest we've been since the initial decline. And look at that, CEI on the rise as well, up 14% today. Let's see what's going on with oil. Yeah, it looks like oil is leading to this. So look at that. Oil has just been trending up ever so slightly, up to $1.10, up 5% on the day. CEI also moving up. This could be one, guys. This is one that I am in. I wanted some additional exposure to the oil and gas industry, and so did Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett ended up buying pretty big, I believe, $7 or $9 billion worth of obviously a much larger market cap stock, not CEI. But he bought up, I believe, Occidental Petroleum. He bought up quite a bit of that. And he's betting that oil's going up in price, or at least that oil companies are going to be pretty profitable for a while. And that's certainly a possibility. It depends on how long these sanctions last with Russia and, how long this conflict lasts and what Russia ends up doing. If they really start using some inhumane methods of war, particularly biological or chemical weapons, that's what people are worried about at the moment, then Europe might have no choice but to decide to stop using Russian oil, and sooner rather than later, right, if they end up doing that. So we'll see what goes on with the Russia situation. But oil and gas, in the meantime, are at very elevated prices. You can see, we'll pull up this chart right here, over the past couple of months, oil is, or really years, oil's just been on the rise. So we're looking at very high oil prices right now. We're probably going to see higher oil prices in the future, and it's certainly very profitable for these oil companies. So we'll see what goes on with CEI. It's looking like it's a good situation for CEI stock at the moment, and hopefully CEI continues to go up. Obviously, I'd rather oil prices move down and gas gets cheaper and whatnot, but in the short term, I'm making a little bet that oil prices are probably going to be rising, unfortunately, right? And that's just something that we're probably going to have to deal with. Now, the market seems like it's taken a turn a little bit. It started to move down. Let's see what this market map's looking like before we end this thing. Let's see what we got on the market map. So, okay. Yeah. So it's a mixed bag. It looks like there's some green in some sectors. Healthcare is particularly good, probably because I'm going to be paying them, that sector, a little bit for some x-rays. And oil and gas is also very green on the news that oil is more expensive. So other than that, it's, some of the tech companies are green, some are red. Microsoft, Facebook are red. Tesla's very green. Apple's somewhat green. Google, Amazon, Nvidia looking pretty good. Looks like credit cards and banks aren't doing great. Berkshire Hathaway's doing great. Doing pretty good at least. Probably on news that they just bought up another company. So we're looking at good stuff. And all in all, a lot of these stocks are doing quite well. I mean, a lot of these stocks are impressing me. Sundial's holding pretty well at the 53-cent line. The market overall is a little red. Gold and silver are green. And a lot of these smaller market cap pump stocks are coming back in a big way. So all things considered, good job to these pump stocks. Look at that, CEI up to 97 cents. We might be hitting the dollar mark pretty darn soon. So hopefully that will be the case. And other than that, guys, that's what we got in the stream for the day. Hopefully you all enjoyed. And feel free to hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if it's your first time viewing. And once again, for anyone who missed the beginning of the stream, I know there are more people in now than there were initially. Had a little injury on my arm, so we will be starting the streams probably 9:25 most days for the next couple of days or weeks, just to give myself a little bit of time to ice this thing in the morning, have some breakfast, take some pain pills. And other than that, guys, that's what we got in the stream for today. So hopefully y'all had a great weekend. I know I had a somewhat painful weekend, but at least a relaxing one. I didn't do too much. Pretty much just sat on the couch the whole weekend. But I'm feeling a whole lot better now. So I'm looking forward to a great week. Hopefully a great week in the markets. Last week was the best week since November 2020. So good stuff. And that's what we've got. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, 9:25.